Arrays. Often you need to use your while and your do whiles and maybe even your for statements a lot of times when you're manipulating elements of arrays. So I believe I've talked about this a little bit. Arrays are really just a convenient storage technique. You've already seen them. Maybe we didn't explicitly talk about it, but hello world, when you create that string hello world, you're actually creating an array of characters. And you can explicitly create an array of characters using the syntax. You can say car, then you can give it a name, any name you want, then open bracket, close bracket, these square brackets like this. This is a special syntax. That means I don't know how many of these there are going to be. I want the compiler to figure it out. So you put the equal sign, then you put a curly brace, then you put every element separated by a comma, then your curly bracket, then a semicolon. And the compiler is going to figure out that this array needs to be 3 big, and then that array will have indices of 0, 1, and 2. And the way you put individual character again is with these single quotes, and PowerPoint's turning these into these smart curly quotes, but it's just that single quote character below the double quote character. So this will create the string Todd, my name. So you can try this and put your name in there. If you want ints, you use the keyword int, give it the variable a name, and then this is a similar syntax, only now I'm telling it this is going to be 3. So I have to explicitly specify 3 characters here if I'm going to specify them. And you could actually leave this off, and then the 3 elements of your array would be undefined, what's in them, and you could define them later. So that's what we did here. So here's undefined ints, that's just a name. And there's 10 of them, and we haven't said what they are. And this is an example of just putting a double. You could do a float, and you can create arrays of just about anything. Now, that said, my recommendation is don't ever use arrays. This is C++. In C, arrays were necessary. In C++, there's something called a vector, and we'll get into that in a later class. It is valuable to learn about arrays, to learn their syntax. You'll probably see them, and they do sort of underlie vectors. But when you're writing code, you really don't need to use arrays. Vectors are a better choice all around. Less error prone, and they're dynamic. Arrays are what are called static. When you create an array of myints of 3, you cannot later change the size of this array to be 6 or 20. It's always got to be 3. It's got to be known at compile time. So let's just go look at some arrays in Eclipse. Okay, so here's our example, car, my name, okay, and then I just created a single car, not an array, and I put this single character in, and so I'm putting out to the console my name and term, so we can compile that, and we can run that, and just as you'd expect, my name prints out there. And you don't have to use this syntax of individually specifying every character. I kind of wanted to do it to start with, but you can also do this, my last name, and you can make this a character array, and you can use, just like we did with hello world, double quotes. Now something happens behind the scenes here that you're not aware of, and that is the size of this array. And when you use double quotes like this, it always puts a null terminator in here. So this array size is going to be 1 bigger than you think. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 characters, but the size of this array is actually going to be 9. So let's print it out, and we'll just make sure that that works. Okay, so there's the output. All right, now let's verify the size of this. So actually, I'll do this the really proper way. Size t, size equals, and we'll use the size of operator. And the really proper way to use size of is you should do size of, and then whatever it is, you should divide that by the size of whatever element you're looking at. This is an array of cars. Well, car is always 1 byte, so this really just divides by 1, which doesn't do much. So in this case, we don't need it. But if this were an array of floats, you'd want to divide by size of float so that you would get the count of the elements in the array, and we might do that next. Okay, so then let's just put out size here, And so see if I'm right. This should be 9. And there you go, because it's counting. Oh, now this is an interesting thing that happened. I was wondering just how smart cout was. See the junk up here? So when I print out my name, see how I didn't include a terminator? So cout is actually printing out the start of this array. It doesn't actually, cout's not smart enough to know that this array is only 3 and then to stop. So it's printing out this array till it finds a 0 in memory. When we started, there must have been a 0 in memory right where it ended. Now we've done some stuff and memory's gotten messed up a little bit. Now there's no longer a 0 in memory. So this is not a good way to code. What you really want to do if you're doing something like this, you want to make sure you put in quotes a terminator in there, and then the type ahead is getting in my way here, or the fact that Eclipse is smart. Okay, so that's really how I should have written this to begin with. Of course, now you can see this is going to be 4, just like this was going to be 9, and now we shouldn't get that junk anymore. So there you go. So that can be pretty subtle, and it's pretty important to remember when you're sizing, to remember that in this sort of syntax that hidden 0 is in there. And if you're trying to print out an array that doesn't have a terminator, that things might not behave the way you expect. All right, so let's do an int array. So int my ints array, and we'll use the same syntax, equals 1, 2, 3, 4, and just for fun we'll do it wrong, and this time I'll just use int instead of size t. Can't use that same one again. Int size equals, so if I say size of my ints, let's see what happens right here, and we'll say cout wrong size, int size. Okay, let's compile and run that. Okay, so 16, right? Because what it's giving you is the size in cars of this array. So to get the value, if you want to know the size of that array, you want to take the size of my ints, and you want to divide that by the size of an int, a single int. And that should now give you 4. There you go, 4. And remember, the valid indexes for my ints, if you want to use them, my ints of 0 through 3. Okay, so I can say int first int equals my ints. That's how you index into an array to use a value in the array, just like that. But doing this is an error. That's going to read some random value of memory, and maybe it's 0, maybe it's not. It's undefined. And we can say this first int. Now as well put that in. Okay. Yeah, so there you can see. So some big number printed out. Whereas if we did 3, since it's been set up, okay, so now it's the number 4. And that gives you your clue about if you use this other syntax of float my floats, and let's say you're going to put 10 of them like this. So now you can initialize them at some later point in memory. You can say my floats of 0 equals 100, etc., etc., etc. And if you haven't initialized it, it's going to have some random value. So the last thing on arrays are, how do you pass them? So let's create that. So I'm just going to go up above here and let's create a function. Actually, let's make it just a void function, my func. And the way the syntax is, you just say, if you're going to pass an integer array, you just do that. You don't give it the size, okay, inside the bracket. So if you want to work with this, you typically do want to know its size. So you're going to have, typically you're going to pass that in to a function where you're going to use a set of arrays. So it's going to look something like that. And in here you'll do something with int my int equals my int array of 0. And you would always want to make sure that whatever index you're using here is less than the array size that's passed in, like that. Let's see what's going on. That's the same mistake I made in class. It's a C# sort of syntax. You actually, the way you pass it is you put the brackets after the name. So in my int array, open bracket, close bracket, and you can actually use this syntax where you pass in the size of the array. The problem is it's a little misleading because there's no checking. So I can make this say it's 5, and then I can pass in my ints of 4, which I've put the call down here, and you're not going to get, let's compile this, you're not going to get any kind of compiler error, and this is going to run and work okay. So I guess I should more or less say I don't ever do that. What I always explicitly, and plus then you've hard-coded the size of the array here and there, and I don't believe there's any way to use a variable name in there. So the way I do it is always to do this, and then I pass in the size of the array as a second parameter, and then I would have to, of course, come down here and change this call now to be in size. Oops, sorry. Apple always intruding on everything. Okay, and then we can build that, and we should get the same result. And there's our 1 printing out. Okay. So like I said, it's important to kind of understand the syntax and get to know arrays. You'll probably see them in other people's code, but you're going to want to use the vector class that's built into C++ whenever possible. And vectors know their size. So when you pass a vector, and you don't need to pass in the size. And there's no way to lie and pass in, tell it it's a bigger vector than it really is. And that'll be upcoming in a later lesson when we get more into the C++ standard library.